Thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for coming to this meeting. So, briefly, a few words about X10, the language. Again, the main point is got it. And this thing is going to flip over and give you a few other bits of information as well. We just released 2.1 version of the language today, earlier today, and there are a number of changes from the earlier versions. The changes are all driven by what Mike just spoke about. The decision that was made a little bit earlier in the project to say we are really concerned about high performance, as we have always been, and that has typically meant take the X10 language and make sure that there is a good way to compile it down onto clusters, onto big computers like the Blue Gene, like the HPC computer that we are building at IBM, the petaflop computer. Make sure there's a good way to do that. Make sure that there's a good way to take the standard high-performance computing applications and show that you can get scale out and you can get performance. So compile to C, compile to C++. Big deal, we're still focused on doing that. But the big additional focus now is to go look at a whole class of applications in the commercial space, mainly business analytics style of space, where you need to scale out. You need to run your code on more than a single JVM. Server-side computations are what we're talking about. And then in that context, use X10 as the language in which you write code which compiles out to a collection of JVMs, which interoperates much more nicely with Java. And that has been behind some changes in the 2.1 system that's out today. For example, in changes in the global, the way in which global objects that have state that spans multiple VM instances or multiple processes, the way in which that is dealt with. We still today are not announcing the multi-VM implementation of X10. That's due out in a couple more months in early December. But what we have worked hard on is to make sure that the compilation into Java gives better performance than it used to be. And we have, of course, faced the standard issue that lots of people who are doing languages in the Java ecosystem and JVMs have faced. Have the right decisions been made about closures, about structs, about fine-grained concurrency, and about generics, because these things matter a whole lot when your goal is to write a ton of code, reusable code, library code. So we have revisited those decisions in the context of X10, and some of the simplifications here are oriented towards making it so that in the X10 model, in the so-called AP gas model that X10 lies on top of, Java can also operate very smoothly. So you can write Java code that runs on multiple VMs using the AP gas constructs that X10 has natively. So that's the direction in which we are going. We have a new release coming out 2.1, and then a big release we are expecting to make in March of next year. There's a ton of stuff going on to stabilize the system, get rid of bugs. There are still several places where we need to have a more robust compiler, more robust implementation, and certainly a lot of work needed on libraries. So the language development work is more or less coming to a halt, and building up the system, that's the work that is now getting a lot more energy behind it. So that's all I have to say. And Evelyn, you want to say something with the tools? Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. So I'm coordinating the tools work in X10, and today, along with X10 2.1, we also released X10 DT 2.1, which is our Eclipse-based IDE for X10, which with services for editing, launching, and building new X10 applications, and here specifically for remote building and launching. So our expectation is that you run your Eclipse IDE on your laptop and build and launch on a remote cluster, or locally if you want to do that as well. It's set up to support both modes. So X10 DT has been around. We've put a lot of work in the last couple of months into it, and it's still evolving. We're really aiming to give you a sort of JDT level IDE, and working very hard towards that goal. So you will see in the future continued more services will be added, especially to the editor, but we already have a full functioning IDE available. Also coming in December, in our December X10 release 2.1.1, we'll be adding a parallel debugger to the IDE. So this is a debugger that's targeting the C++ backend of X10, and it's based on an existing open source C++ parallel debugger on the PTP Parallel Tools platform. We've been building X10 source level support in it so that you have a source level parallel debugger. And the first version will be coming out actually in time for supercomputing, where we'll be giving a tutorial on X10, and will be part of the official next release in early December. We're also busy building the rest of the tools front. We are working on profiling support, and a basic X10 profiler will also be available the end of this year or early next year. That gives you hotspot information based on gprof information. So we're building front end, so you have X10 source level profiling. And there'll be a lot more work coming in the tools front. We want to build more performance tools and porting existing performance tools to X10, tools that have already been proven. We're working with the HPC Toolkit team here on that, and porting more and more of their functionality, and with other groups as well. University of Florida as an example on porting their tools to X10. So there'll be a lot more coming in the tools front. That's of course also an area where we really invite collaboration, and are very interested to collaborate, especially when it comes to porting or adapting existing technology to the specific needs of X10. So that's on the tools front. Is there any questions on what you've heard so far on X10 in general? That would be a good time right now to ask them. And if not, we'll be moving on to our second part, where we would like to give you an overview of the kind of work that's going on with X10 and what people are doing around X10. Okay.
One quick thing I forgot to mention in my remarks is, this is also the first release in which we are supporting compilation to CUDA. So you can write X10 source programs, and some portion that is stylized, some stylized portion of the X10 source program that has been marked as code that needs to run on a CUDA device. We generate CUDA code, we generate the back and forth of the data from the CUDA device to the core supporting it. So it looks actually quite nice, and it's mainly the work of Dave Cunningham in our team. I invite you again to go download the system and find out more about it.
All right, let's move on to part two. So we'll be hearing...
What should I do?
Google thing keeps coming up. No, it's going to keep coming back. Just put it aside. Yeah. Okay. So we'll be hearing about 6 projects on X10, but this is really only a subset of all the work that's going on, and we try to put this, all of the work that we are aware of and collaborators with us on X10 on this slide in a couple of different areas. There's a lot of work in the application space, so these are projects here where we're building new applications with X10 and really exploring X10's use for various different kinds of applications. We don't have a presenter here, but one project I want to point out by Chandra Krins and her team at UCSB on building, leveraging X10 for cloud infrastructure. So her team has been building the AppScan cloud engine, open source, AppScale. I'm sorry, thank you. And in their latest release, they released X10 support. So that's work that has been going on there. Another area is tools. We'll be hearing one of the tools efforts, and another project I want to point out by Darko Marinov, who unfortunately can't be here today, on testing using X10 for X10. So both writing testing in X10 and for X10. So he's been busy building model checking support for X10 programs. So for really advanced verification testing of X10. Other areas are curricula, so a lot of groups are working on building X10 curricula. We ourselves are doing this as well. Vijay is teaching a course at Columbia for the second time on X10, and there are a number of other schools that are starting to teach X10. We'll be hearing from Corky very soon about what they're planning to do at Rice. Also the class by Steve Gordon and Dave Hudak at the Ohio Supercomputing Center, that was an online class, has already taken place, and the other ones are busy developing their curriculum. Also in Christoph von Braun in Germany, the class has already taken place. Then there's some work going on libraries and frameworks, and we'll have 2 presentations here in that space by Eli Televich and Tony Hosking. You'll hear in a little bit. And finally, language infrastructure, a number of projects here. And again, you'll be hearing 2 projects in this space by Daniel Frampton, who is working together with Steve Blackburn, and by Tehu Sohe, who is working with Koichi Sasada on Ruby, X10 support for Ruby. So I now want to move on to the speakers here. If you could go back. So we go in this order, and we'll try to keep it to a 5-minute informal presentation. And we'll start with Jens.